Hello there, this is Brennan Marr, host of Page Turners They Were Not, a Star Wars podcast. And I'm here to tell you about Anchor. Anchor is the best way to make a podcast. Why is that? Well, first off, it's free. Yes, you heard me right. Anchor is free. Anchor has all the tools you need to make a podcast from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you on various platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can make money from your podcast. And get this, with no minimum listenership. That means you can make money even if no one listens to your podcast. That, of course, is not ideal, as Anchor will allow you to spread your podcast, bring in more viewers, and you can make more money because of it. Everything you need to make a podcast is in one place on Anchor. If you're interested, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Thank you, and may the Force be with you. Hello, everyone. My name is Brennan Marr, and that noise you're hearing is my ventilator, and welcome to Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. Today, I would like to ask the simple question, what is the Force? In discussing what the Force is, I would like to begin by saying I am not including midichlorians in this discussion, particularly because they are not the Force. The Force is beyond that. So let's talk about what the Force is. Now, let's go back to the original explanation of what the Force is from Obi-Wan Kenobi in George Lucas's 1977 film, Star Wars. Here's what Obi-Wan said. The Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, penetrates us, it binds the galaxy together. There you go. That is our explanation of what the Force is in the original film. An energy field created by all living things. Yoda later explains that life creates the Force. But let's go back to the original film. So Obi-Wan explains it to Luke in this way. Later, when training Luke, he says that a Jedi can feel the Force flowing through him. The Jedi do not own the Force. The Jedi and other Force users are merely a conduit through which the Force flows. Obi-Wan also explains that the Force partially controls your actions and partially obeys your commands. It's really about opening yourself to the Force, reaching out with your feelings, as Obi-Wan also says. It's simple. The Force is simple. It is a simple concept that can be applied to anyone of any spiritual persuasion, or even anyone who believes there's something more than what we see. The Force is something that can be understood by people everywhere. And I think because of its simplicity, members of my church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, may look at the Force and say, oh, that's quote-unquote Mormon theology through and through. Someone who's Buddhist, someone who's Hindu, someone who's Catholic, someone who's of any number of Christian, Muslim denominations, of any denomination, including, oddly enough, neo-pagans, Wiccans and whatnot, as well as people who are not part of any religious denomination, but are of a spiritual persuasion. The Force is simple. So that's what our explanation is from the original film. The Empire Strikes Back, Yoda explains that, the Force connects all things. Light creates it. That we are luminous beings. That the Force is in us. And that not believing that you can do something means you can't do it. Yoda teaching Luke that the Force is not about your size or your strength. It lives in all things. And that one can sense it all around. We get a lot more explanations of the Force throughout the Star Wars saga, but in ways that pretty much correspond to what we understand. There is one that I would like to talk about that's a really big deal to me, and that is Luke Skywalker's explanation of the Force in The Last Jedi. Now, Luke had read, or rather perused, as he seems to hint, the sacred Jedi texts. Yoda says, oh, read them, have you? And Luke's like, well, kind of. But Luke, it seems, has at least perused them. So I think Luke understands the Force in a way that is more akin to, I think, what the ancient Jedi, the very first Jedi, understood. And that is that the Force is balance. Now, beginning in The Phantom Menace, the discussion of the balance of the Force comes into play. And I think that there is still a lot of discussion over what that means. And you know what? I think that's a good thing. Star Wars is what I would call tip of the iceberg storytelling. It gives us just a little hint of something, allowing our imaginations to run wild with understanding what we don't see. An iceberg, often you see just the top of it. It's usually a lot bigger than what you see. So, for instance, in Star Wars, Obi-Wan mentions the Clone Wars, or rather, Luke mentions it and Leia mentions it. At the time, we didn't know what the Clone Wars were, but it allowed our imaginations to run wild. So it was never clearly defined in the Star Wars movies what balance means. I have my own theory, but it is not necessarily the definitive concept of balance. But here's what I see. In The Last Jedi, Luke teaches Rey that the natural balance, and again, this is just my own opinion, is the force. The natural balance in the universe that exists between peace and violence, life and death, cold and heat. Those kind of natural balances, the balances of natural living. Now we know that life creates the force. Life is full of opposition. What do I mean by opposition? I mean that everything has an opposite. That is the natural state of the universe. At least in the definition as I see it of the force. That the natural balance that exists is the force. A natural balance that exists in all beings, including Ray. Luke says it's like a tension. So, the force is power given by the natural state of existence, the balance of nature. To me, that is what the force is. The force is not the light side or the dark side. Yes, there are light side and dark side, Ashla and Bogan, as they are later called. The force encompasses both sides. I think that what the situation is that when people start to embrace the dark side, using powers like lightning and force choke and other really nasty things, they're throwing off the balance. Because they are destroying the natural balance of the universe. The Sith and other Darksiders are fond of bending the natural order to suit their wills. That is imbalance. Not to mention, they are, I think, focusing on one side of the force instead of balancing it out. Now you may ask, well, the Jedi use the light side. And my answer is yes. There is, however, something more. In my mind, the Jedi are guardians of balance. Their duty as guardians of peace and justice is to make sure that the natural order exists unmolested. At least that's how I see it. But regardless, I believe that when it was prophesied that the chosen one to restore balance to the force, that meant stopping the dark side users from destroying the natural balance. The force is balance. The Jedi are guardians of that balance. Therefore, the Jedi are guardians of the force. I hope that a lot of this has made sense. But I think The Last Jedi gives us the most insightful look at the force. In understanding not only what the force is, but what balance is. Without overcomplicating it. But ultimately, the simplicity of the way that Obi-Wan laid out what the force is some of the greatest exposition in film history. And the most simple, yet effective way of bringing forth this new philosophy that has impacted real people in so many ways. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think the Force is. My name is Brennan Marr. That noisy here's my ventilator. And thank you for tuning in to Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.